Take a trip down memory lane with me. The daughter of the love and happiness man himself, Teenie as the world knew him. Mabon Hodges was his name, but I knew him as Daddy. Daddy grew up on the outskirts of Memphis, Tennessee. My mom was a native of Louisiana, and I am their biracial child, born in the 1960s with a story to tell. From abandonment to being denied paternity, to being sought after for adoption by musical colleagues of my dad's and my Kojic pastor, to growing up with the love child of Rufus Thomas, to Daddy's house parties, to Al Green's house, to Bobby Womack's house, to molestation, to looking for love in all the wrong faces, including living with the ex-brother-in-law of Marjorie Harvey, Steve Harvey's wife, to multiple marriages, to finding Christ, and later leading my dad and mom to an understanding of salvation, forgiveness, and repentance. It's story time. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking this trip with me down memory lane. I'm Tabitha, the daughter of the love and happiness man himself, Mabon Teenie Hodges, co-writer and lead guitar player of said song. It's story time. As the title states, Daddy told me he tried to kill his childhood best friend. It was during a discussion I'll get into a little later. He and I were having about him having guns around or whatever. But anyway, Daddy collected girls, gadgets, guitars, and guns. To begin with, Daddy had 8 kids with 6 different women, all of whom managed to find respect one for another. My mother even taught his last wife how to drive a car. Daddy also had many relationships with many women on many different levels. But more so than that, Daddy had many true friends who were women that far outweighed his love affairs. They loved the man, not the musician or its magic. Well, if you spend any time in his space, you'll know Daddy had a love for collecting gadgets also. From tables with secret compartments, boxes with secret compartments, to guns that looked like cigarette lighters. His guitar collection was more extensive than I knew until after his departure from this life. Nearly 20 guitars were allocated through his will, with the remaining to be left to his brother, who was executor of his estate. I never knew what the remaining number was, and I've been told by a few siblings they never received their guitar. The whys they would have to explain. But moving along, Daddy also collected guns, none of which were allocated to his children in his will. I would imagine the executor has possession of them. As I mentioned before, one of them was in the form of a cigarette lighter. It was around that time I realized he collected guns along with girls, gadgets, and guitars. It just so happened to be around that time that his temperament began to change also, and he started to be mean to some point, with some people and at some time. I approached him in a regular conversation just about having guns and their temper, and it was then that he shared with me he had tried to kill his childhood best friend by shooting at him as the guy ran away from him. He said he was 14 years old at the time. He could not recall why he got so mad at his best friend that he would try to kill him. And he said he emptied the gun shooting at him, actually. But he never told me who that best friend was. So, needless to say, Daddy, born in a veil, came into the world fighting. Daddy lived on oxygen for the last 15 years of his life. He left this world fighting. And he also had a fight of him in between. I understand that he and his brothers even fought the police officers who would raid Aunt Freddie's house, who found him in the veil in the trash can that I've mentioned in previous videos. But I understand that he and his brothers, and maybe even some of his cousins who lived on the hill, would fight the police officers as Aunt Freddie poured out the moonshine or the um the bootlegging alcohol that she would sell. They would fight the police off, giving Aunt Freddie time to pour it all out. So it's like almost like no wonder the just the level of the fight that was in him. And one of the other stories of the family has been told that my great grandfather, who was Daddy's grandfather, it was said in the family that it was always like he killed a white man and got away with it. And the reality of that probably had to do with the fact that his father was actually a white man. And he did have a lot, or the Hodges family had a lot of pull back then and in the area of Germantown. My great grandfather, if I'm correct, gave the land where the church is that Dad's funeral was held, and where Dad is actually buried, and many of my ancestors are buried there as well. So um, I understand there was a lot of authority in the family, even down to the fact that one of my grandfather's sisters, she had a last name different. She had been married prior. And I understand that her next husband had to change his last name in order to marry her to match her children's last name, which was relatively close to her last name. But I won't call any names on that situation. So, anyway, mean was kind of in the bloodline, authority was in the bloodline, and things like that. I've even heard one of his brothers would hang cats in trees as a kid, and I'll tell you who that is in my book of memoirs to come. So I've even really personally witnessed an unprovoked meanness from that same brother on the day that my daddy died. So it's just more to come. There you have it. Daddy tried to kill his childhood best friend, but in the end, he was a lover. And for that, we're all very grateful. Until the next teeny time story time, in Daddy's own words, what a world, what a world. And I would like to add one more thing just before I end in ending today. Today makes 2 years that my mother went to meet with Dad in heaven. So, yeah, Mom, we love you, we love you, we love you, we love you, and I love you most. Until the next time, like, share, subscribe. Toodles.